Welcome back. This is part 2 of lesson 8.6. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about normal distributions and what it means. So again, here's our bell-shaped curve. It's symmetrical. It's a normal distribution. And you can see here that we have sort of sectioned this off. And what this means is this. So here's x with the line over. That's our mean. So there's our mean value. And then you can see out here we have x minus sigma or x plus sigma. That stands for a standard deviation. So you can see from here to here, from this distance to this distance, we are 1, because there's just 1 sigma, we're 1 standard deviation from the mean in this direction. We are 1 standard deviation from the mean in this direction. And you can see that in this bell curve, 68% of all of our data is within 1 standard deviation of the mean. And that's usually good. That's usually where that's why it's 68%. A majority of the population falls in that category, okay? So number 1 down here, it says, about blank of the data fall within 1 standard deviation. Well, we just said it, 68% falls within 1 standard deviation in a normal distribution. What percent of the data falls within 2 standard deviations? Well, that goes out to here. So now we're getting further out into the tails. 2. See, we are 2 standard deviations in either direction, and that is 95% of the population. And then the last one asks, what percent of the population falls within 3 standard deviations? And you can see all the way out here, almost to the tips of the tails, were 3 standard deviations. That's a large number of deviations away, or standard deviations away, but we now have 99.7% of the population. I do want you to notice that it is a high percentage, which means a very high probability, but it's still not 100%. Even 100% of a large population will not be within 3 standard deviations. There will always be those outliers, things that are well away, more than 3 standard deviations. Those are typically values that we don't consider all that significant, though, because they don't fall within the greater portion, okay? And so that helps us to see that. So you can kind of see this down here breaks it down even more. We can see where those percentages fall in line. Here's the mean again, right in the middle. So we said 68% falls within 1 standard deviation. So if we break that in half, that means 34% is 1 standard deviation greater than the mean. 34% is 1 standard deviation less than the mean. Then we get out here to what would be the 95 percentile. And so we can see another, all the way out to 2 standard deviations. It's 34 plus 13.5%. That's the total. That would be 2 standard deviations greater than. And then we can see, how far out we go. Between 2 and 3 standard deviations is another 2.35% of the population on both sides. And then there's only a small 0.15% of the population that is going to be greater than or less than a population.